welcome to the Courageous Self-Care podcast. I'm your host, Christina Marlette. On this show, we talk about self-care that goes deep and wide. I like it all. So sometimes we think of self-care as just stuff that we do to our bodies and more to the exterior of our bodies. And what I like to share is that self-care goes so far beyond that. It goes deep into the internal world. I liken it to a jungle that is mysterious and maybe a little bit creepy. There's a lot of unknowns. And we do want to go there because once we have discovered what is in the jungle, it makes our life so much more rich. And most importantly, I think we have so much more energy to give to ourselves and then to give to others. But we do need a guide for that jungle expedition because we just don't know what we don't know. And so I love to be that guide for you. I love making these podcasts. When I first started over a year ago, I thought, I could probably talk about self-care for a good year, and I have done that, and I still have more to say. So I'm happy to be here for you, and I also love to have guests on the show. So today I have Heather Thatcher from Vancouver, Canada. Welcome to the show, Heather.
Thank you so much, Christina. I am so grateful that we get to spend this time together, and I really can't wait to share my experiences of courageous self-care with you.
Ooh, I'm so excited. So Heather, tell us a little bit about who you are and what you love to do.
Absolutely. So again, my name is Heather Thatcher. I'm also known as the Vitality Lifeguard, and I'm leading an intuitive health movement because the truth is we all have a pretty good idea of what we should be doing to be healthy, but we get stuck trying to figure out how to squeeze that into our hectic schedule and actually stick to the plan. And I've been a registered nurse, Reiki master, and holistic healer for almost a decade. And I've discovered that the key to maintaining a healthy lifestyle lies in reestablishing this intuitive connection to your body. When you know how to listen to your body's intuitive messages, being healthy no longer feels like work. And it's my passion to help people put that into action for themselves.
I love that you do both sides, like the registered nurse and the Reiki master. How did that come about?
Actually, I met my Reiki master, the one that taught me, while I was working in a pediatric intensive care unit. She was another nurse there. And the unit that I was working at had a very holistic view of health. And even some of the physicians, these intensive care physicians, would get Reiki done by her. So it's just the conversation started when I moved into that area, which is shocking, really, because as you said, it's like a highly medicalized view. But then just right away to be introduced to that. And then I started getting into aromatherapy, which I then worked on a small clinical trial with one of the physicians there where we were looking at the effects of lavender on post-op pain management. It just started down the rabbit hole of wonderful.
Yeah, that's awesome. I love that. And I was just at the doctor this morning and I tend to go the alternative route as much as possible, but I've had this skin stuff happening and I went to an acupuncturist and she said it was my liver. And my husband said, just go to the doctor. I'm like, I don't trust Western medicine. But I did go, even though the acupuncturist helped me and everything's resolving within just a few days of going to see her. But my doctor said, it's about a complement to what you're already doing. It's not this or that. It can all work together. So I'm really grateful that I go to a practice where it's holistic, like what you're talking about.
That's wonderful that you have that. Because yes, absolutely. It should be this balance. It doesn't have to be just one or the other.
Right. Yeah. Because I would just choose all the fun alternative stuff. And she said, is there something that lost your trust? And I said, oh yeah. And I talked about a story from when my daughter was a baby. And I said, I just don't have trust for the Western system anymore. And she said, well, let me work to regain that because we can work together. So softened my resolve a little bit. And I feel like I can make room for both now.
Oh, good. It's nice that you have that kind of doctor, because I feel like now with some of the younger crowd in their medical programs, my sister just went through this, so I know they are incorporating more holistic views. So that way, when you come to your doctor with like, oh, hey, I went to see an acupuncturist, they're not just like, oh, they just put pins and needles and things. They're like, okay, I can see the traditional Chinese medicine side of this and how this will work in with what I can offer you. So it's really nice to see this shift is happening more globally.
Yeah, and it's so cool that you did a study with lavender. How did that turn out?
It was really interesting, actually. We just got the part of it started, and then unfortunately I had to move. So it has been continued, but actually it decreased the amount of pain medication that people needed post-operative from a a GI surgery, an abdominal surgery, quite significantly, statistically significantly decreased. So more research needs to be done. This was just one look with a small sample size, but it's promising.
Ooh, very exciting. Yeah, I love to hear stories like that where more and more the ancient practices that have been around for thousands of years are being recognized, and science can prove why they work now.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Very cool. So Heather, on this show, I love to get guests to share their current favorite self-care practice. And I've been working on a book, and I was just writing in the book, it's valuable to hear other people's perspectives on self-care because it's a very individual thing. And I feel like the media feeds us what they think is self-care because it will bring in income for them, and that's fine. And at the same time, we also need to navigate through that ourselves and see what it is that fills us up. And it can be different from one day to the next. So what's something that you love to do for self-care right now?
So my favorite self-care practice is actually a question. So like you've said on your website, and like you said earlier, like self-care is not bubble baths, chocolate, and wine. It's not this necessarily just this external practice, but we can really get swept up in that idea. Like you said, like media pushes this kind of thing. So they're kind of giving us an idea of what we should be doing to take care of ourselves. And my question that I ask myself regularly throughout the day brings it back to the internal. And so what I ask myself is, what do I really need at this moment? And then I just go quiet for a little bit, take a few grounding breaths, and give space for my intuition, my body's intuitive knowing, to come forward and let me know what I'm craving at that moment. And sometimes it's just to get up and stretch because I've been sitting for a while, or that I need a drink of water because I've been too focused and too busy on whatever I was working on to notice I was getting thirsty. Other times I might feel like I need to go meditate for a while, or go walk my dog and clear my head. And maybe it's that I do need to have a little piece of chocolate, or maybe I do need that bubble bath. But it always starts off with that question, what do I really need at this moment? And then just create space for me to listen. And so initially I set reminders in my phone so that I would have this little reminder that would remind me to ask myself this question. But now that I've really worked on strengthening that intuition and that connection, I can almost feel resistance building up in my body. And then I'm like, oh, I need to slow down and ask that question. What do I need right now?
That's fantastic. And what great advice to our listeners. I use a similar question. What is the most loving thing I can do for myself right now? And you're right. It really shifts how you listen to your body. It shifts how you pay attention. And it does strengthen your intuitive muscle, which is one of the foundational skill sets of courageous self-care. And I love how you pointed out that, yeah, maybe you do want some chocolate. Maybe it is taking a breath and meditating. And because it's coming from a deeper place, it's not like, oh, I'm so stressed, I need chocolate. It's, what I feel like would nourish me right now is just a little bit of this self-love that comes in the form of chocolate.
Absolutely.
But if there's something underneath, then it's so much more powerful than a Band-Aid solution.
Exactly. This is you like truly treating the root cause of the problem, not just, like you said, putting a Band-Aid on it and a superficial fix. That's just going to allow that other bits of energy to ball up underneath until it like just explodes.
Right. So I'm curious, did you learn this question from someone? Was it an intuitive thing that you developed? How did you bring this practice into your life?
Through meditation. So meditation is such a great space because it opens you up to receive messages from yourself, from outside of yourself, from spirituality, whatever you subscribe to, whatever you connect to. And this question definitely came in. I had a very busy lifestyle for a very long time. And so when I started to introduce the meditation in, this question really stood out for me. And then also an affirmation really stood out for me. And that affirmation is, I am still within while all around me is moving. And that just really brings in that stillness that you need to be able to hear those messages and to also find questions like that.
That's really powerful. And I love that it came from within you, or from spirit or creator or universe, or yeah, exactly what you said, whatever you call the energy that we are all connected to. That is super powerful. And I like how you used your phone to create a habit. And I I've heard the expression that our phones can either be weapons of mass distraction or they can help us really shape our lives and work for us. And that's a great tip too. If you are trying to cultivate a new habit, put reminders in your phone. It helps so much.
Absolutely. I'm all for digital minimalism, but I don't think that that means that you need to take everything off your phone. It's to be very mindful of what you do on your phone and when, and grouping your screens so that on this one screen, which is your productive, your self-care, your health screen, doesn't have your social media, doesn't have those distractions, that can be on a different screen. So it's just to like really focus in, use your phone as a tool.
I've never heard of the screen segregation before. That's interesting. I like it.
It's been a game changer for me. I love it a lot.
Good tip. You're full of them. So we're going to pause here for a quick commercial break from our sponsors, and then we will be right back to hear Heather's story of courage. So be sure to stick around. We're back. Thank you for sticking around. I love the story of courage that we get our guests, the guests to share on the show. And before you do that, Heather, what I want to mention about the story of courage, why I feel it's important, is there are so many different levels of courage that we tend to see, especially when it's other people doing stuff and there's a little bit of self-judgment in there, like, oh, that person's doing that courageous thing, I could never do that. But the more we immerse ourselves in the energy of courage, which is also a skill, it's a muscle, and if you flex it more and more often, it becomes stronger. Everyone has courage. It's just that we have different levels. And so when we hear other people's stories of courage, either we'll go, oh, that's a good idea, I never thought of that, or gives me hope that this person moved through it and I might be able to do that too. Or it might be, I did that, I didn't consider that to be courageous, maybe I am courageous. And then once we have that courage and we are affirming that we are a courageous human being, we can use it more and more often to go outside our comfort zone and grow and discover who we really are, and then share that amazing person with everyone else. So Heather, I am looking forward to hearing your story of courage.
That's such a beautiful description of courage. I love that. So I remember on a previous episode of your podcast, you shared a quote from Brendan Burchard that said that the opposite of courage isn't fear, it's avoidance. And I feel that for a lot of us, me included, we can really get caught up in avoiding doing something because we're worried that we can't do it right. Or we avoid something that we're working on because we feel that we're not good enough or that we could be doing it better. And so growing up, my family always put a big emphasis on learning. I would come home with a 96% on a test and my parents would say, where's the other 4%? And they absolutely came from a place of love. They would help me understand my mistakes so that I could be even better in the future. They helped me see these failures, these little failures, no matter how small, as an opportunity to grow and develop a greater understanding. But at the same time, this also started to ingrain this belief in me that no matter what I've accomplished, I could still do better. And again, that's not necessarily a bad thing. It pushed me to always do my best in everything that I did. But the other edge of the sword, though, is that I slowly started believing that whatever I had accomplished was never enough, and perfectionism began to rear its ugly head in all areas of my life, including my health. I found myself struggling to start something because I was worried that I wouldn't do it right. I would talk myself out of going to the gym because I wouldn't have enough time to get everything that I should be doing at the gym done. So rather than go and only get the chance to do some cardio without the strength training, because if that was all I could do, maybe it meant that I shouldn't go at all. So I saw this playing out also in my self-care, because someone on the internet started saying you needed to dedicate 30 minutes of self-care per week. And now it's gone up to 30 minutes every day. But most days I felt too busy to get everything done, let alone find a whole 30 minutes to dedicate to a bubble bath or something like that. So because I couldn't dedicate the 30 minutes of what they said I should be doing, I would avoid it and not do any of it at all. I would try to follow a specific diet plan, but then when I cheated and ate something that wasn't in the rules, I would feel guilty, like I failed, and just abandon it and start again tomorrow. I was like fully in this trap of all or nothing thinking. Instead of just doing the best that I could, I talked myself out of a lot of things because I probably wouldn't be able to do it right. And this belief that if you can't do it right, if you couldn't give 100% to it, then why do it at all? So I was the opposite of being courageous. I was caught up in avoiding things out of fear of failure or fear of letting myself down. But then I discovered neurolinguistic programming and how our thought patterns influence our external behaviors. And I used this theory in combination with meditation and self-hypnosis to rewrite my thought patterns so I could release that all or nothing thinking, release my limiting beliefs. And sure, I don't always have a full 30 minutes of downtime every day, but 5 minutes is better than no minutes. And so using this technique to shift my perspective so that instead of avoiding things because I wouldn't be able to do it well enough to live up to my expectations, I would still just try. And then this first started manifesting when I wanted to start a daily meditation practice. I tried so many times to get started, but the thought of sitting down for like an hour a day, because that was my all or nothing thinking, was telling me that's what I needed to do. The whole hour of meditation just scared me away from the idea and I avoided it. But after using that neurolinguistic programming and the other techniques, I was able to release this and just get started by sitting down and meditating until I was done. And some days that was 5 minutes, some days it's 90 minutes. And again, it comes back to listening to your body, giving it what it needs and not holding yourself to any expectation. So by doing this, I slowly developed the courage to start applying it to other areas of my life and healing everywhere that all or nothing thinking was really showing up for me.
That's super powerful. Thank you for sharing that, Heather. And I think you're touching on something so important, which is this, something that I developed that came through this continuum of courageous self-care. And so it starts at where everyone needs to start. Like every master was once a disaster. It starts with, I don't do self-care. For whatever reason, like I can't get it right, I don't have the time, I don't feel like I deserve it, I need to take care of other people. So everyone starts there. And then as we learn to start implementing some of the skill sets of courageous self-care, then we move into, well, I'm doing it because I know I should. It'll have some good benefits. I don't know what they are yet, but that's where I'm headed. And then we move up the continuum to, I practice courageous self-care because I want to. I'm noticing some differences. I feel better. Things in my life are shifting, like you said. And then we get to the point where I practice courageous self-care because it's who I am. I don't need to work so hard at it because I've developed habits, whether they are thought patterns, whether they're beliefs, whether it's just how you show up. You have so much more energy. You have so much more to give to others because you're giving to yourself first. That's where we can get to. And at the beginning, it's super hard. Just like any skill, we need to learn to implement it, but it has nothing to do with deserving. We learn skills because we want to get better at them and they'll improve our lives. And so I feel like your story follows that arc, and now you're in a place of vitality and health and being able to share what you've learned with others because you have climbed that ladder.
Absolutely. And I think when we're looking at that ladder, that continuum, it's so tempting to just jump from where we are all the way up to the top of the ladder. We want to just have it be done and just be that way. But like you've clearly described, it is a journey. And so really, if you're struggling to get started, think of one thing that you can do that will take literally 1 to 2 minutes that will get you started. And then the next day, do that task plus something that's another minute. So like build really slowly, because I know it's in our time of instant gratification, we want bigger changes because like, yeah, we like that kind of stuff. But when you think about it, if you start with just 1 minute a day, by the end of that month, you'll have 30 minutes. So like you have to start slower than you think you need to.
Right. And what I love also about courageous self-care, the approach that I've developed over the last several years, is that it's not like you have to do 30 minutes all at once. It might be, oh, I'm waiting in line. What can I do to use this time effectively so I can cultivate some wellness? Oh, I could take some breaths, these specific kind of breaths that I know are going to calm down my mind. Oh, I could stretch while I'm waiting in line, or in traffic, I could do some mula bandha breathing or something. So it's not even about carving out a giant chunk of your day. It's about finding those micro mindfulness moments where we actually have a ton of time in our day to take care of ourselves. We're just not using it effectively. And so I love I've got a minute. What could I do to maximize my vitality and my wellness in this minute? And that is a huge shift that I know everyone can make because we all have these pockets of time.
Absolutely. So well said, Christina.
Thank you. Well, I've been talking about it for a year, so I'm getting better at it. Heather, I'm sure people are curious about this vitality lifeguarding and all of the interesting stuff that you're involved with. So where can they connect with you online?
So I am the most active on Instagram, especially Instagram stories. I share these quick actionable tips every day to help you move closer to your intuitive healthy lifestyle. So you can find me on Instagram. The name is @VitalityLifeguard. I also have a podcast. It's called the Intuitive Health Podcast, and you can find that on all major podcast hosting platforms. And I have a gift for your listeners. If they head over to heatherthatcher.com/intuition, I have a free gift that gives you the 3 critical components of my intuitive health system. So it'll help make it easy for you to be healthy. And again, you can find that gift at heatherthatcher.com/intuition.
Excellent. Yay. Yay for free gifts. That's fantastic. Heather, it's been a real pleasure chatting with you. Thank you so much for sharing your wisdom and your actionable tips and your journey and being vulnerable and authentic. I really appreciate that.
Well, thank you so much for creating this wonderful space, Christina. I really enjoy listening to your podcast. I'm just so grateful I can be a guest.
Oh, thank you. I'm so glad to have you here. And you, dear listeners from all over the world, I've been noticing some new countries popping up. So hello to people in Malaysia and South Africa and the Netherlands, India. It's very exciting to be able to connect with you all over the world. I see you, I feel your energy, and I'm so grateful that you are listening. And what I want to leave you with is the idea that when you prioritize your own well-being, it is having a global effect. So every woman, we're geared towards women, but of course men too, every woman who takes a moment to do that 1 minute of something courageous, or says, okay, I'm going to breathe instead of get angry, or I'm going to really feel this emotion and allow it to move through me rather than stuffing it. Every time we do that, it sends an energetic ripple throughout the world, and you never know who it's going to touch. It might touch someone who you will never meet, but it does have an impact, and it is so worthwhile. It's a win-win. You benefit, and so do people all over the world. So I encourage you to continue listening, to practice courageous self-care, to implement these tips, maybe start using reminders on your phone, or make your screens on your phone segregated, have a self-care screen and a social media screen. And I'm so grateful for you being here and listening and taking care of yourself. So Heather, thank you again for being here.
Thank you so much.
My pleasure. And thank you for listening. I look forward to connecting with you again next time. Bye-bye for now.